Welcome to Coffee by the Fireside with historian Diana Martinez, moi. And it's summertime, it's June. In June is also Pride Month, okay? And we're going to be celebrating Marsha P. Johnson for Pride Month. Because Pride, I don't know if it could be Pride without Marsha P. Johnson. So let me tell you her story. She left a very religious family in New Jersey at the age of 17 after she had just finished high school. And in New York, she was able to find a new place where she began a new life. She remained Christian through her life. She took the name of Marsha P. Johnson, P as in pay it no mind, because this was her response when people would ask her about and question her about her gender. In New York, she was able to embrace her authentic self. She expressed herself through her fashion that was full of vibrancy, bright colors, and creativity. Flowers crowning her head was her signature look. When she came to New York, a 17-year-old Marsha met an 11-year-old Sylvia Rivera. She took care of Sylvia and taught her how to do makeup and how to dress. They became close friends that would become collaborators and leaders in their community for the fight for human rights, and specifically for gender rights, transgender rights. There were very few job opportunities for transgender people, as they suffered from a lot of job discrimination, and so they had high unemployment. She had to do sex work to survive and also help the people in her community survive. Often she would pay for rent or buy food for homeless, transgender, LGBTQ people in her community. Income and housing were not secure for her through her lifetime. And income and housing were also not secure for many transgender, LGBTQ plus people of color in her community as well. This is still true today, even on a national level, due to job discrimination against transgender people of color. Okay, so transgender people, but specifically also more transgender people of color. As a drag queen, she felt like her full, authentic self. And even though she had odd jobs, she still really had to rely on sex work to make all the bills and ends meet. And sometimes they didn't meet. And that's why, there were periods of homelessness, food insecurity as well. Okay? Many times, her job as a sex worker put her in situations where she was abused by the clientele. And oftentimes, she was arrested. She was arrested about 100 times for either being homeless or for doing sex work. There are competing stories about exactly what happened on June 28th, 1969 at the Stonewall Inn. One source said that Sylvia and her had arrived to the Stonewall Inn at 2 a.m., even though the riot had started at 1 a.m. Another source said that Marsha climbed up a light pole and dropped a very heavy purse onto the windshield of a cop car, and it ended up shattering. One of the more well-known accounts, and the account that I like the most, is that she instigated the riot. As according to a witness, she instigated the riot by throwing a shot glass that was behind the bar. All the accounts put Marsha and Sylvia at the front lines of the riot, where they expressed their frustrations of being marginalized, discriminated, and abused. This riot at Stonewall Inn, this was the turning point, where the moments where the community said, "Ya basta, that is it, that's enough." Marsha was part of the sit-ins and organizing meetings, rallies for the different advocacy groups and organizations. She joined the Gay Liberation Front, which was an organization that accepted transgendered people at a time when not all organizations, gay rights advocacy organizations, accepted transgender people. And she was always there to ask how transgender and people of color, LGBTQ people of color, fit into the larger gay rights movement, making sure that they were not left out. Marsha had formed with Sylvia Rivera the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, and they kept challenging how transgender people were excluded from the larger gay rights movement. Okay, and so also to note, I noted this in the video on Sylvia Rivera, that it's called the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. Today we don't use the word transvestite, as that word is offensive. It is time to retire that word. Now we use transgender, but this is, that name was created by transgender people in the 1970s. So yeah, so historically that's the name. When Marsha got AIDS in 1990, she advocated for people to not be afraid of people with AIDS. Okay, she kept saying, "Hey, we're people, we're still people. Don't be afraid of us." 2 years later, she died, but not from AIDS. Police first reported her death as a suicide. And her community that knew her said that was false. And they knew that she had died from anti-LGBTQ violence. In 1992, that was a year that was recorded for the highest amount of anti-LGBTQ violence in New York City. It was not until 2012 did the New York police reopen her case as an unsolved murder. Her murder still remains unsolved. Marsha P. Johnson is remembered for her generosity and compassion to people who were in hard times, and especially people who were living on the streets, especially transgender, LGBTQ, people of color, and especially the youth in her community. She did what she could for others with what she had. She did what she could to feed, clothe, house transgender and LGBTQ people, and especially people of color. Her legacy is carried on with the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, there to protect and defend the human rights of Black transgender people. And that is our celebration and recognition of Marsha P. Johnson. This is Pride Month, but it's not just a month. It needs to be every day, all year long. And we also need to remember Pride is a celebration, remembering the movement and how it started. But also, we need to remember that this was started as a riot and started by transgender women of color.